Handle your high with Daddy Yoshi.
All right, welcome to the show, David. I got my friend David Kalick. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, right? David Kalick?
So yes, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Ted.
Yeah. We've known each other for years. We competed with each other. You were a competitor, but you're also a coach, a really good coach, actually. I really respect a lot of the things that you're doing because you're very scientific like I am, and you understand the intricacies of some of the drug use, but also some of the nutrition at a level that most of these. Now, I'm going to be a little bit of a bitch here because for a second, because I get this a lot from people who ask me, like when they were trying to select a coach, or when they come to me after they've worked with somebody else who's maybe like 20 something years old, and there's just not enough experience there with a lot. The guy or gal might look great in the gym, but they end up being a very failed coach, if you will, because in terms of nutrition, because they just don't have the knowledge or the experience to work with some of the things. And I know you do, and I do. Of course, we're not spring chickens anymore. We've been around the block a few times.
I'm old, I admit it.
We've both been around the block a few times. As a matter of fact, I think we're about the same age. And I think one other thing I remember my first, like we were just talking about this before we started. The first time I remember really having a deeper conversation with you was when we were lining up. It was at a show. It was at a contest. I think it was it Lonnie Teeper's show? Or no, was it next?
We did a few shows together. One of them was Lonnie's, but it was one of the two Masters show. Yeah, Masters Pittsburgh. I'm thinking 13 or 12, 2012.
Yeah, or maybe even earlier than that. It's like, who knows?
Yeah, I think so.
Because
right around there, though. Right around there. But I do remember us talking, and that's where we met. Yeah.
Yeah. It was. You're a big guy. Normally, you're in the heavy or super, right?
Yeah, and I almost killed myself trying to come down to. I'd competed years ago. I was really a competitor, in the '90s, and I did well back then. And I, had some personal issues, whatever. And I tried coming back, and I got into these master shows, and I did 1 year. I did it as a super heavyweight, and I placed pretty well. But then I'm like, okay, well, let me see, drop down to light heavy. I got this idea to do light heavyweight for some reason, and I feel like I was dying just trying to get down and make weight, and it was just crazy. So that just basically officially retired me to want to get back into competing. Plus the fact that at that point in time, clients were accumulating coaching and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so when I met you, I was. God, barely able to walk after having to make the weight. And I remember backstage, and we're just, getting ready. And I remember that very well.
I know. I thought, wow. I thought I had it bad. I always struggled as well to push my because the judges always wanted to see me. They always felt at least the ones that I spoke with felt that that I should be a light heavyweight, that I could be one of the bigger light heavyweights, because I was always big as a light heavyweight. But man, I know, I just looked better at 216, 218. I just looked better.
Exactly. There's certain sweet spots that you can't.
I wish,
but
the
problem is when you come down too much, then it's hard to put the tube back in the toothpaste as far as revolumizing and all that stuff. Yeah,
sometimes you just can't, right? Sometimes the toothpaste doesn't go back in the tube. So
exactly.
I know that I felt that several times. As a matter of fact, I know that there was a few times where I know I could have done so much better if I just listened to if I would listen to my own advice today, but I didn't have it then.
Right, but exactly. It's funny, you and I as coaches, that's why we're better coaching other people and not ourselves, because we make these irrational decisions. Someone objectively on the outside is probably correct, but yeah, that's the nature of it. Yeah,
and that's the justification and the benefit of having a coach that you can bounce these things off of, especially one who's had the experience like you have and like I have out there, who's actually been out there in the trenches, dieting, trying to make weight, trying to look the biggest and the best that you possibly can. It's hard for me to accept that from somebody who hasn't really gone through that process. That's me. Yep. It's just me personally. I just feel like, hey, I'd rather have the guy who's working on my car. I hope he has a car like mine.
You got to be you had to have been in the trenches. You had to have gone through the sting of what a prep is, or an effective prep is, at least. You need to have gone through the motions. Otherwise, you have a blindfold on and you're just speculating and guessing when you're working with somebody.
Right, and you have you work with some really cool people that I know who I really like go ahead and rattle off. You had a laundry list of people that like Sean Roden you've worked with, and you've worked with Stan Mcquay, I love Stan. He and I have known each other since the '90s because he always looked so much bigger as a middleweight than I fucking never thought I could. I'm like, how does this guy look so big? The same thing with like who was it? Man, now I'm brain farting.
You were getting old.
No kidding, right? I need to take my Geritol or something. I actually do take brain stuff. Yeah, exactly. I take a lot of stuff.
I just try to smoke as much medical cannabis as I can. And that's my go-to.
Yeah, well, when I do that, I don't remember shit. I mean, last summer, I was with all this COVID stuff. I was watching a little bit more Netflix, and I was staying home in the evenings more, which is fine. But I realized like I was smoking more. I was smoking more in the evenings. Because I only do it in the evenings, and I remember, and then later in this, like at the end of the summer, right, like things started sparking back up, and I'm getting busy again. And I'm doing more stuff, and I'm going, and at night I like to watch like one thing, right? I like to watch one fucking movie, right, or something. Right. And I'm always cruising through. I'm going, how come I've seen all these fucking movies? Because Netflix, it'll tell you, if you're halfway through it or whatever. I'm like, I've watched. How did I watch all these movies? I guess I was fucking high, and I didn't fucking even remember like what the fuck I was watching.
Short-term memory. It's like nowadays. I remember when I was in my 20s, 30s, I'd see a movie stoned. I remember nowadays it's like if I watch the movie stoned with my wife, the movie's over and I forget.
You're like, what the fuck happened, man? Like, what was it? Yeah. What movie were we watching again? That's my test, by the way. That's my litmus test at night. Yeah. I'll get done my work day, I cook myself dinner, I relax, I smoke a bowl, and then I sit in my chair and I fucking like try to find something interesting on. Yeah. And then 5 minutes after I start watching something, it's always a movie because I like movies or some series. My litmus test is I ask myself, what movie am I watching? Because if I can't remember, I'm too fucking high.
For me, it's like I'll do that, or like I'll just sit. At the end of the day, I'll just do that, or I'll even watch like Sopranos reruns and just Breaking Bad reruns, things like that. My go-tos.
Now, let's see. We saw each other at Olympia. Yeah. Excuse me. It was great seeing you, by the way, actually. And what? So, who were you with at the Olympia this year? Excuse me.
Pretty is me. Like I was actually able to finally just relax and just enjoy the shows.
Isn't that nice?
To not like to run around. So like I can't tell you as you have it how many times our knuckles have knocked on a door at 6 o'clock in the morning to check on a competitor. So it was great to actually just go there, hang out, go backstage. It was great just to see it. And this Olympia actually turned out to be really good.
Yeah,
this whole crazy year and what Jake Wood and what those guys did to pull off that event actually is pretty phenomenal. If you think about it.
Absolutely, man. I'm actually really glad I was glad I was able to go. I was glad I was able to work out there and have some fun and see everybody. It was almost like I had, it's like family for me. This is the water cooler for us. If I don't get to go to shows, then I don't get to see my coworkers as easily. I can talk to them, but I don't get to see them, and that's really like I like seeing JM. I like seeing Jim. I like seeing all the judges that I know, and I know just about everybody, all the competitors and stuff. So I really enjoy seeing my friends.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like our workplace. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just these guys. It's like JM. I've known him since I was 19. To see. We're all getting old, of course. But no, it's just great, as you said. It's just to catch up with all of our colleagues. We should call them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
now,
we're all sounds like a cliche, but I consider us to be all one big family, right?
We are. We are all one big family, whether we're in the same industry or not. I try to find creative ways to in my own mind, from my own perspective, see the world, see my fellow persons, my fellow man, my fellow woman, my neighbors, my brothers, my sisters, whoever they are, as family, as people, as who I'm truly connected to. I really believe that this is the missing link in our culture right now, is that with all the dissension that's going on, and I don't mean to turn this into a political commentary right now.
No, I know.
But right now with all the dissension...
I think what you're trying to say is we have to start going back to basics, what makes us who we are.
Right. I mean,
what makes us tick as society and friends. Because as I've learned, as I told you backstage 2 calendar weeks ago, what we've learned certainly more so from this year is all we have in our life is family, friends, and loved ones. I mean, really, what else do we have?
Right.
So
I think also we have, with all the things that are going on in the world, the issues that are on the table, like you got COVID, you got Black Lives Matter, you got racism, and we have connectedness, a world connectedness, a world economy. You got all these different elements, and they all seem to, and we have so much information streaming at us at like terabytes a second, right? Like everything's coming at us. And what do we believe? What do we think? What do we say? And also at the same time, we have a large group of people, and I'm just going to say it. I know we have a group of people out there who are legislators, who are people in power, who do not want us to have all the ideas that we have. I know this. That's not a good. I don't think that's safe for anybody. Everyone should have the latitude to think as they wish. They don't have the latitude to do as they wish, but they have the latitude to think as they wish and express it in a non-violent format, and right. that's important.
Go back to expression that is non-violent, that is confrontational or whatever. We need to fucking start having peace. We need to heal and learn how to communicate better, healthier.
Yeah, I think it's what we're doing now is all fear. It's all fear-based. COVID responses are fear-based responses. Every single one of them, wearing masks, social distancing, self-quarantining, that's all, and vaccinations. Those are all fear. It's fear. I'm afraid of this happening, so we got to do this to make sure it's not happening. And I'm a stud. This is what I got my degrees in, was philosophy and ethics, and making choices based on fear. It doesn't ever work for anybody. It's like trying to go to Vegas by trying to avoid all the potholes along the way. Say, I don't want to hit these things. I don't want these obstacles in my way. So let's do everything we can to avoid them, and let's just hope we get to Vegas. No. The quickest way to get to Vegas is a straight fucking line. You pick the shortest, straightest route, and you go. And then you just deal with the problems along the way that you encounter. If you don't encounter any, fucking fabulous. If you do, fucking fabulous. You figure out a way to get over to move around them, right? But that's not what we're doing in our world today. We are trying to predict responses. We are trying to control outcomes, and you fucking can't do it. If there's two things I know about this life. One, we don't control anything really, except for two things. What I think, what I do. That's it. I don't control what happens after that. It's basically it. So, and anything beyond that, trying to control those outcomes or those results is just wasted effort, because sometimes we can do it, and sometimes we can't.
Exactly.
So, but now
it was good seeing guys and seeing everybody, and as far as clients right now, people are in off season. Dorian Haywood, he's going to do the Indy Pro. He's off season right now. His prep starts in about 5 weeks. Adam Young, 212. It's a little frustrating because he just missed his Olympia qualification by 1 point. So we're going to go at it. He's going to his first show is going to be in May as well. It's going to be 2 weeks later. It's going to be in
so you sent me
Puerto Rico.
Okay, you sent me some pictures of who was it? Dorian, and I'm just looking at it right now. Dorian, and then he looks big.
Chris, remember? Yeah, we're looking forward to his. He's going to be doing Indy. He's going to be scary.
He looks round, that's a fucking killer combination.
We'll be putting that combination up there again. Plus, he's having a really productive off season, so he's having some good improvement. For Chris Robinson, who just won my super heavyweight, who won the overall USA. So it's exciting because he's only 29, so he's going to take this whole calendar year off.
Oh, he was such a nice fella, man. I think I got to see him at the USA's. He seemed like a real nice fella. Fucking phenomenal, great bodybuilder.
Yeah, he's going to be really good. He's 29, so
he's young.
Yeah, so that's why he's able to take actual year off. He needs work. His rhomboids, erectors, hamstrings and stuff. So that's what we're trying to work on. And then his debut will be the Cal Pro in 22 May.
He could smile more though.
He could. But if you saw, he was very emotional when he won. He's like crying, he freaked out.
It's not the emotion that on stage that I'm worried about. It's when he's not on stage that I would say, smile, man. Like fucking be nice to people. Like it's like everyone's got their own thing.
He's cool.
He seemed like a nice fella actually.
And then Haley McGrath, who's my IPB pro female bodybuilder, look out for her. She'll be doing Chicago. So it's pretty cool. Now it's just as you know, right? We have a little bit of a downtime, right?
About 2 months. Yeah, not about 2 months. We'll see though with all these. Looks like we're going to be having more shows. Well, I think we're going to be having more shows here in Arizona because we're still pretty open for the most part. Although I don't know how long they'll
I think we're going to see more shows in Arizona. Like for example, I thought the USA was great out there. I thought
it was awesome.
Great.
Yeah, it was worked out perfectly. It felt intimate, just like the Olympia. Now, if there's one thing that COVID has done for this industry this year, for me at least, this last year for me, was it made the shows that I attended and judged a lot more intimate, and I liked it. I was able to talk to competitors. I was able to be. It seemed like and it's also fans and stuff. It was just with less people, it was easier to be more intimate in terms of getting to know people.
Yeah, I got to tell you. So that, or, you know, I know they're probably most likely going to have the Olympia back on the strip, you know, next year. But you know what? I mean, and I think you know, the Planet Hollywood, I could see that going great. But it's a very but I would have no problem if it was Tampa again. I thought it was great.
I talked with Jake, and I have a sneaky suspicion. Now, again, he didn't give me any assurances, but I have a sneaky suspicion that just from my conversation, it's going to be because this isn't going to be another COVID year. We're not going to get out of this just yet. Right. So they're going to have it. They're going to have Orlando again.
I have no doubt. I think it makes sense
for at least one more year, probably, because it was easy.
It makes sense. So, like, honestly, it went off great. What they did was phenomenal. I think Jake was talking to him. He said, I think basically all the way across was the size of an entire football field from screen to screen. It was like 110 yards or something.
I know. I looked out there. I was like, "Fuck, this is big."
Yeah, it's fucking big. And honestly, like, you know, you and I are backstage, and just the whole backstage environment was. I agree with you. It was more of an intimate show, and so was the USA. I mean, think about this. The USA was great at that water park. I hope they keep it there. And I talked to Tamara and Tarek, and I think that they're definitely considering it because, hey, it's like you can go there, a little family vacation area, bring the kids. The venue, literally, you walk down and there's the venue's adjacent to where the actual rooms are and stuff. So it's just compared to like Vegas, where, Tad, you know, the Vegas USA is the hardest, most annoying fucking venue.
Oh man! And the Olympia is almost as bad because you got to go back and forth. You got to go this week. You got to go to the convention center. You got to go to the expo. Like what? It was like man, it's like
yeah, just the way the heat is. You know, the way the heat is at the USA in July in Vegas. It's just different. You know, and you know, water fluctuates. You know, substitute water retention, then goes back because of the heat, and like it's a clusterfuck trying to get people ready for that.
Well, you got to tell them, don't fucking go outside. Don't walk around. You can't do that.
Fucking lay the fuck down and relax. You know, now with social media, they want to get the selfie and, you know, get.
Hey,
chill out, everybody. Just
I usually tell my athletes in previous years. I've told them, hey man, like I ask them, when are you showing up? What are you gonna do in between then and Saturday? They're like, oh, I thought I would go around and get some souvenirs. Like, no, fucking, you're not. You can do that after. Do it after. It'll fuck up your conditioning. It'll fuck it up. Like, it'll make it hard for me.
Well, you know, as well as I do, we find that last week competitors they're on social media to 3 a.m. because they're getting nervous. They're working themselves up, and I'm like, hey, cortisol is a real thing, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Just relax. Social media definitely had an effect on, you know.
If they did what I tell them to do, then it would probably be a different experience because from a certain perspective, I get it. I've been there where you're nervous, you're anxious, you want to get this sucker on the, you don't want to get on the road. But man, sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit quietly, just calm the mind, meditate. Yeah. I usually meditate when I don't have nothing to do. And that's the thing. Like, so this segues into a nice little component for me because everybody knows that I'm very big into mindfulness and meditation and self-reflection, and that true knowledge comes from self. It comes from us questioning and finding the answers ourselves, within ourselves. And I can't, every competition I've ever done, that night before judging was one of the most, those are some of the best times that I can think of for introspection, because the only people that really know what's going on with you is the other competitors. They know what experience, the kind of experience you're having, but you're depleted, over-exercised, overworked, over everything, and you're in this really great state to let go of bullshit. That's the easiest way I can describe it. You're in this great state to say, how many big life decisions were made after a contest or before a contest? A lot of them, I tell people, don't make them. This is not the time to make them. But they make them. Look what happened. We'll go to the Olympia. Look what happened in Olympia a couple days after Olympia. What happened? Well, Shanique Grant decides to retire. She's 24. How what's retire?
Yeah, there's
to me,
a lot of irrational decisions that are made.
To me,
relationship decisions, right?
To me,
marriage breakups. You've seen it all, right?
Not the time to do this. Go get some food first.
But I've seen it. I've seen. We've also seen. Well, you know how it is. I mean, I'm sure you've seen as well as I have. You go to the weigh-ins at the national shows, and I remember one time, one of my middleweights, Daniel Alexander, he rest in peace. But so the middleweights were lining up, right, and then this guy who evidently was a heavyweight, he goes, "Wow, those are some short, thick heavyweights," and I'm like, "Dude, those are middleweights." And then you see these guys they just, and then I've seen some people the problem is with some of the national shows, as you know, it's very delusional, our sport. Someone wins or they qualify somewhere at a show somewhere around the country, and their gym buddies are like, "Wow, man, you look like a pro. Look at all those veins," this and that. And they think, right? And then they go to a national show like the USA or whatever. And I've seen them as well as you, and they're potato bumping their pals, and before they go in, they're like, before they go in the weigh-ins, the registrations, and they come out and they have that deer call in the headlights look, because they see striding glutes, whatever. They're like, "Holy shit!" And I've seen people that's why when Sandy or Steve, before the prejudging starts, sometimes they'll say scratch competitor 223, scratch competitor 226, because some of these guys are going back there and they see they get a piece of humble pie, and they're like, "What the fuck are these guys?" I mean, they can't believe. So there's so much anxiety and stress, and as you know, some people, as soon as they smell the Protan, they start getting nervous. There's that Pavlovian dog where you hear the dinner bell.
I get excited when I smell the Protan, man. I get excited.
You smell the Protan, it's all of a sudden they start getting nervous, and so there's just so much of that going into the show, let alone as it is. But as you said, you're right. It is a great time to look at yourself, in retrospect.
Well,
look at yourself and examine yourself.
Yeah, an athlete takes themselves from zero to hero in a number of weeks. They do all this dieting, all this training, all this sort of restriction and all this deprivation. We have to make serious sacrifices in our personal life, in our professional life, in our food, in our exercise, on all levels, right? It's total full life encompassing. There's no aspect of your life that is not touched in some way by bodybuilding. If you're doing a contest, it's all going to get touched. And so when you get to the apex of it, this the pinnacle of your prep, which is really to me the day before the show, the day before and judging. It's that time of self-reflection. Well, it was this, and the question that you should never ask yourself, and this is, and I mentioned this whole thing because I want to say this, is was it worth it? Of course it was worth it. Why the fuck did you do it? it's like yes, it was worth it, but that's something that's intrinsic to us that we have to discover from within. But to me it's a wonderful space because it feels. This is just my personal experience. Every show I did 57. And every single time I sat there the night before judging, it was a surreal experience for me. It was just like all this is leading up to these next essentially 10, 15 minutes on stage. I don't include night show because I never cared about the night show. I never cared one iota. I didn't give a rat's fuck how people thought about my posing routine or about what.
I know what you mean.
All I cared about was how well did I do. This was my litmus test for all the effort that I did. I was like, how well did I do? What do I need to work on? And I think that the best thing that we could ever ask ourselves in any situation is, what was I supposed to learn from this so that I can be better the next time? I don't care if I win. If I win, great. That doesn't teach me as much as if I lose. If I lose, now I have enough. Unless you're Mr. fucking Olympia right now, you shouldn't care about winning. You should care about getting better.
That's exactly right. If you're doing these shows, excuse the cliche, but you really do need to enjoy the process.
Yes.
And I know it sounds like such a fucking cliche, and I know it sounds like such a Facebook express, whatever you want to call it, but it's like, honestly, even the top pros, if you can't enjoy what you're doing, don't fucking do it.
It's not, honestly, there's too much sacrifice.
Yeah, it's going to be unhealthy. Not just physically. Although, if you hate doing something,
it's unhealthy.
That correlation between the mind and body, it's going to be more
That's
unhealthy
right.
for you.
Well, You're absolutely 1,000% correct. I tell my athlete, I don't, sometimes I wonder how many people that I work with, how many people that I've talked to about this, really get what I'm saying when I tell them this.
Some don't like doing these shows. Some do it because they feel it's symbolic in their own lives. Like they feel it could have something to do with like the adaptive phases of childhood. Like there's so many different moving parts with why sometimes someone competes. And sometimes, unfortunately, people are competing for unhealthy reasons. You know?
Absolutely.
And you do need to soul search, why am I doing it? I mean, of course, some guys are just so talented where it's like they can't like not do it because someone's like, you know, look at this guy at 16, you know, whatever. Just some people like, you know, genetic freak. But even then, it's like, if you're doing it for self-validation or you're doing it for some reason, then you need to really like, what I really recommend to people, and as I'm sure you are, as we are doing this conversation, is evaluate, you know, why am I enjoying this process? What am I getting out of it? As you said, am I learning from this actual process? What did I learn from this prep? Not even so much about, chicken disagrees with me compared to ground turkey, whatever. I mean, like, what did I learn about myself as far as who I am, what I can expect out of myself, what kind of goals, how is this involved in life? Can I apply this to other aspects of life too?
And exactly. Where is my own value? What is my value? Am I honoring that? I think, so that was, when I asked myself those questions, I was like, for whatever reason, I think dieting, and I think this is probably true for people who also fast. I have not done extensive fasts, just short fasts, but I do know that fasting gives me this very similar mind clearing kind of an environment where it's like right before the night before the show, man, I'm fucking crystal clear. I am like clear, man. Like for whatever reason, man, I could write, 1,000-page essays on the meaning of life in those moments. Like that's the shit that's what at least that's me.
And it's funny what you're saying about looking back, looking at yourself like the night before a show. What's great is the best scenario is for that, I think, to really learn and experience what you're just saying is, make sure that the person's ready a couple weeks ahead of time. So
absolutely.
The last week, as you know, last week's going to be, we know it's going to be stressful as it is, and it's like just flying to the venue, going to the baggage claim to load your stuff and getting you, like just that whole process right there is different from a normal day of prep, right? A meal's going to be delayed for an hour, you're dehydrated. So right away, you're thrown off. Like, so even if you can actually just capture 85% of that look, like, wow, it looks so good 4 days before the show. Why can't I just go up there like that? If you could just capture 85% of that, to me, that's peaking.
Absolutely.
Because of all with cortisol and all the stress and all the fucking nerves, this and that, like it's cortisol is going to just, there's no way to actually peak. Like there's just, unless you have, it's impossible to reach a perfect exact peak. So again, if you can capture 85% of it. So my point is that athletes, you want to work on, you want to be ready a couple weeks out. So I'm not saying the last week should be like a week of coasting, but it should be a week of coasting. It should be a week of where you said you should look of reflecting on yourself and like, what did I learn from this prep? Not like, oh my God, last week shouldn't just be so, jam packed with just, okay, well, gotta deplete, gotta load. It shouldn't just be it shouldn't be so crazy where, in other words, try to be ready early. And I'm kind of bouncing around, but try to be ready early so that you can enjoy what you're talking about, the self-reflection and learning.
Yeah. There's
oh, shit, am I going to be ready tomorrow morning? Well,
a lot of people have their own, I mean, everyone's got their own issues regarding their preps and stuff. And so some people can do that. Some people have to take it right to the fucking day, right? Like they just take it right into the, but yeah, ideally, I think you're right. I think ideally it would be ideal for most people, especially bodybuilders, because bodybuilding peaking is so much more rough than any other.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, of course, there's gonna be manipulations the last week, of course. Right. But I'm just saying, like, and some people need real manipulations, But I'm just saying, just in general, just to feel like you're grounded.
Oh.
How do I phrase it? That you want to be grounded and know that like you're gonna be there in a couple weeks. Like everything you're set. So that you can actually chill
this,
a little bit.
I think I forgot what you said a couple minutes ago. You said something about this sport was filled with delusion, but it's also filled with, let's see, how do I put this? So when people get ready for these shows, they're doing bodybuilding, whether they be a bikini, figure, fitness, doesn't matter what aspect of this sport that you're involved in, but this sport, the kind of person that gravitates to bodybuilding or the fitness world in this industry is the highly insecure. It's the person who doesn't like the way they look, doesn't like the way they are in this life, and so they go out there to affect change by changing their bodies. And I know that's because that was the way it happened to me. Now, not everybody's like this, but the vast majority of people who are involved in the sport, even the best pros, are very insecure about who they are, and they don't know who they are. They don't really know. The ones that do don't care as much about the same things that most of the other ones do. And because of that, and you know this, most of the pros try to give them a criticism during prep. Try to give them a criticism. They'll fucking jump all over you like white on rice because they're highly insecure. They can't take it as a learning moment. They can't. Not some might be able to, but most of them, they don't want to hear from you. They got their coach. They got what they know, and they want to follow that. And they have to do that. They absolutely have to do that to keep themselves from letting their minds go to places that they don't want to go. But really, they should be like we all. Like I know this is my case. Like I wanted people to give me the truth, but it was very painful for me to hear criticism when I was young, in my 20s. When I got my 30s, I was better because I knew more. And when I got my 40s, I definitely didn't have an issue with criticism. I knew where my faults were. But I was looking for learning moments. But that's the progression. That's the progression of age. That's the progression of wisdom through experience. But I really truly believe that the sport is just chock filled with people who are insecure. Because it makes sense to me. It's like saying the best writers in the world, or I should say, the best authors in the world are writers. Well, that's obvious. You need a good writer. They're going to hopefully produce books that are good. So all the best books in the world were written by writers. Right? So like all the best bodybuilders in the world are kind of insecure. It takes an insecure person to look at yourself and go, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. That's not good enough.
But yeah, right. But it's there has to be a balance of, some people, they take the criticism and they take it, the wrong way.
They take it to heart. Yeah. We're not talking about you. We're talking about your body.
We're not talking about you as a right.
Yeah.
But it's like in some people, as you know, when you have to have the conversation with some people, let's say if they're delusional, I don't want to use a delusional word again, but like some people are like, yeah, man, I want to get my pro card, whatever. And if their genetic predisposition is not there,
right?
At the same time, you want to encourage a person to reach their goals, and of course, we'll coach them to the best of our abilities and encourage them and all that. But at the same time, sometimes there's, that conversation needs to be had, and that's a hard conversation for some competitors, as you know. And a lot of times they'll, so it's a different balancing act,
Well, speaking of pros and egos and all that kind of shows, and what did you think about all the results at the Olympia this year? So I'll give you my. Let's approach it one division at a time. We already talked about women's physique because it was a surprise. I'm going to talk about her this first because it's on the top of my mind.
Right.
Shanee Grant. So Shanee Grant, I think she's probably the best female bodybuilder, female physique, female figure, female physique athlete.
She could hybrid.
She could do almost anything, with the exception of fitness. She could do almost anything and still probably be the best physique up there.
Right.
And then she loses, which I didn't know. I really didn't see how that. I didn't have her losing on my scorecard, but I'm not. I wasn't judging that show. But I do. But I remember seeing her. I went backstage. I saw her. She got second. She came backstage and she talked to JM and just said, "I don't want anything. I don't want to do any interviews, any pictures, no nothing." And he said, "Okay, go ahead, bye." And she left. And I know she was upset. She wasn't crying or anything, but she was upset. And then, last week, I'm retired. And to me, that's what she came out with, this big announcement. And she has the right to retire. She has the right to do whatever she wants. But I'm going to tell you what I feel like it sounds like. Which she's 25 or 6, something like that.
If that.
I think she's 24, 25, something like that. Anyway, she's in her early 20s, mid 20s at the most. And to me, it just sounded like a child pouting.
Yeah, well,
but I don't want to. I want to make it very clear because she'll probably hear this. I'm not saying that she was immature or anything, but it feels to me like this is a response to being so disappointed. Because if I were her, I would have thought, how did I lose? Because I was thinking the same thing. How did she lose? Don't get me wrong. The lady who won, I think her name, she was from Washington State. Trudeau. I think Trudeau was there. I forget her last name. Yeah. Anyways, she was phenomenal. She was great. But was she better than Shanique? In my opinion, no.
I think Shanique, first of all, has a better physique.
Absolutely. I think so too.
More balanced. There's no doubt she's rounder. The waist, we know that. She has a better, she's a better physique, but I think that, on paper, Shanique should not ever lose, I just think that what happened was, I believe that compared to last year, I think in a way she had made some improvements, I think she had, was not as hard as last year. And I think the girl, from Washington State was crazy conditioning,
No, she was.
But it's to me, so what that creates an apple orange situation. Because
you have to. Is it? And I don't mean to interrupt you, but as a judge, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to weight? What's going to be weighted heavier? Is it going to be condition? Because Shanique wasn't in the same condition that she was in the previous year. And I know this. I actually talked to Aaron, who sponsors her from Redcon One, and he said that she didn't even start prepping until 8 weeks prior to the Olympia, and she hadn't worked out for 6 months prior to that because of COVID. So she hadn't even touched a weight, and she was in bad. And so she was able to.
So if you got to figure what she did was phenomenal, given
it
all
was
that, right?
unbelievable. When you look at it, I go, wow. She was off by, I would say, 5% or less.
And I think what the problem is being a champion is that I think if you you set a bar, and she set a certain bar maybe last year or the year prior, and then I think sometimes, standee see, whatever, if they see a slip, a drop, it
can work against you.
It can work against you.
Yeah, and especially when somebody shows up in the number 2 spot or who's really,
right.
really, really stellar, like.
I'm on the fence with that placing. I'm going to be frank with you. I'm on the fence.
I was too. I don't. Yeah. I respect what the judges, because I wasn't sitting in their chairs looking at what they were looking at. I was a spectator. I was doing media stuff, but I did see her routine. I did see that division, and I thought it was a clear cut. I just thought it from my eyeballs, it looked pretty clear. Although I will say this: when I saw, I think her name is Trudeau, right?
Right. Yes.
When she did her routine, I was like, oh fuck. I was like, well, because I saw her glutes and her hamstrings and her quads, and she was just dialed. She was right there. I was like, fuck, she's.
Yeah.
So,
and then Natalie got third, Natalia got third, so it's like they conditioning right there. So I think.
I really love Natalia as a person and as an
she's fucking awesome.
She really is, but.
Who doesn't love her, right? But at the same time, like.
She's had a hard time getting that physique right so that she could place where she needs to place.
I know. She's capable of winning this.
Here's the funny thing. Oh, she's totally capable. The funny thing is, she's changed her look. Now, she lost her coach. It's sad that Matt Porter died, and I liked Matt a lot. I thought he was a really good guy, and he did fucking wonders with her. Now, then she switches coaches, and she's taken on a new coach, and he took a different approach, I think, because her conditioning was not the same. It wasn't bad conditioning, but she was smoother. She was exactly what they asked her to do, but they asked her to do that in figure. When she was competing in figure, I think she should have converted. She should have made it the crossover to figure this year, because she would have done better probably there, maybe.
Yeah, and I agree. But I think her coach Andrew Fu was amazing. Did a great job with her.
I don't know Andrew personally.
He did. Andrew did a great job with her, and what he did was just to try to adjust to what they're saying. And as you know, a lot of times it is frustrating. Sometimes when you try to adjust your competitor to come in a certain way. I'm not talking about open bodybuilding. I'm talking about the other divisions.
Right.
When they say, it's too soft, you come in, and you try to adjust, you get the feedback, and then you try to adjust what we're talking about or asking for, I should say, for the next show, and then you bring that in, and then they say, well, it was the other thing is a little frustrating. You're like, well, we comply to what you're asking, But again, keep in mind, it's all these divisions, everything's so subjective. I mean, it's.
Well, that's what. So here's the way I describe it. Here's another way to look at it for competitors out there who are interested. As a judge, I have to present my opinion. That's all I'm doing. It's just my fucking opinion. That's it. It's just that my opinion actually counts towards the score when I'm doing that. But my opinion is based on one immutable fact: comparison. So I only judge people based on a comparison. Look by yourself, you might be phenomenal, but when you stand next to other people, that's the comparison. So when you get so that's what I'm saying. Like when you get any advice at a show about how to improve on that show, then it's only applicable to that show.
Right.
It's not applicable to you as an athlete. It's just that show. That show, somebody else was harder, somebody else was leaner, whatever that case may be, right? But maybe it won't be the next show. So it may not be the advice that you need to make you win the next show, to make you do better. It's just
the lineups are different. The
lineups different, and they showed up different.
There's the whole thing of like the 212 division. You know, I was talking about Adam Young earlier. So these guys, it's interesting. The whole year, these 212 guys are flip flopping. Like, you know, Adam, like in the Tampa Pro, like Adam beat Jason Lowe at the Tampa Pro, and then then Jason Lowe beat Adam at the New York Pro, but then Weapon X, you know, Olsen, you know, he beat Adam at the Tampa, but then it was reversed at the New York Pro where Adam beat him there. And these guys, you know, it's just, you know, these guys get flip-flopping back and forth, you know, so sometimes it's kind of like, you know, it's like if you're the flavor of the day, that particular, you know.
Well, there's also, you're right, there is that component, but there's also, at those shows, there's different judging panels. And even though like maybe all it takes is it takes about two judges, in my opinion. Yep. Two judges to make a difference. One judge won't make a difference, but two judges will make a difference. So when you have two people who line up with the way they see things that's different than the others, then you're changing the results. So you can have one guy winning one show, another, and you get second at a week later, right? Same lineup. Of course. Not a whole lot else changes other than the eyeballs that are looking at him. Again, this is a sport of comparison. It's like fucking ice skating.
And I'm trying to learn, like, you know, I do this, I coach out of passion, you know what I mean? And I'm going to say this very humbly. I'm very fortunate to be able to be, with things I've done with with investments and property and stuff. I'm very fortunate to be able to do this for passion. So instead of getting, you know, so to me, it's like, you know, and I go there, I'm really into it, you know, and it's just you know, it's hard to, you know, these are things that are out of our hands, you know, the pricing. Right. You know, all we can do as a coach, as you know, is just all we can control is what we put up there, you know. Right. And so we're just trying to learn, like, you know, there's apple, orange, pear, pomegranate, you know, I think that's so subjective what people want, you know.
And that's the reason why it's so important to focus on what you were saying earlier, which is if you don't enjoy this journey, then no matter what the results are, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's gonna be disappointing. So you got to enjoy the journey. You got to make sure the process that you're on is something that you're fucking excited about. Because if you're only in it for the results, then you're not a winner. You're not the winner that you think you are. Because that means that you're not going to be happy if you lose. That means you're not going to be happy if you don't get results. That means you're not going to be happy if you don't do what you're supposed to do. And we don't always do what we're supposed to do. We don't always get the results we want. We don't always win. So we don't always do this stuff. No matter, even the best, even Phil Heath, who's one of the best Olympians ever, he didn't win twice. He didn't win more than twice. The first couple Olympics, he was getting like 12th or 7th or 12th or something like that. So not everybody, and he's the gift. And the guy who I've written articles about this, Flex Wheeler, probably the best genetics ever in bodybuilding so far that I can recognize, and he never won the Olympia. Yep. And it wasn't because he didn't have it. Because he didn't have it in his physique. Oh, he was ready. His body could have made him a winner. But he wasn't ready. He and I talked about this a couple years ago when I judged the Kuwait Pro Show. And we're sitting there in Kuwait, and I remember talking to him about this, and he goes, man, I would have told you a couple years ago that it was this guy's fault. The industry didn't like me. He goes, now I know, man. I just fucking wasn't ready. I wasn't ready up here.
I think he was tough after the loss to Ronnie that year.
Yes.
You know,
everyone.
Ronnie won.
He knows that his timeline was going like this.
Yeah, and I saw, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Flex is, you know, phenomenal or whatever. But I mean, I've talked to Peter McGuff, rest in peace, about this, and some other people, and it's like, if you look, I mean, Ronnie was glutes, hams were just carved out. You know, he beat him. You know, and it's hard. And I know some people are like, oh, there's no way she lost it, but it's like, I mean, if we're talking about bodybuilding judging, like, I mean, so I think that was a tough one, I think, for him mentally, which of course would be, you know. And
well, you know, some losses people never get over. Just ask Sean Ray. I love Sean, but that motherfucker can't get over certain losses he had.
I know, especially like a couple next to drawing. It's like, no, I mean,
I know he believes that there was one of those years where he thought he should have had it. That's fine. He probably don't, but I'm not going to disagree with him. I mean, I think he was a great bodybuilder, but I just think it's funny that all of us. I mean, there's every one of us who's competed has had a show where we were like, I think I should have done better. You know?
No, no, of course, that's part of it, and I think that's part of what should. I mean, competitors, guys, if you're listening, listeners, yeah, and like, don't beat yourself if you lose a contest, like whether it's local, national. Just don't. These cliches that I had, these corny ones going. You know,
no, they're cliches for a reason, like, because there's truth in them.
Yeah, you gotta just evaluate and just like, what did you learn from? What can I do differently? I know these sounds like very generic questions, but what can I do differently in the prep? Did I give my wake up in the middle of the night and have a half a jar of almond butter when I wasn't supposed to?
Hey man, I've had phone calls at 2:00 in the morning about that shit. So I know this stuff.
Yeah, I'll just do an extra hour of cardio tomorrow to make up for it, and then you know as well as I do. When you get progress pictures, and
you're like, what?
His face is still full when there's a caloric deficit. You're like, this motherfucker he's eating extra. You know, so yeah, you got to about like so with these shows. What I'm just trying to say is like these things. A lot of this is so much of this is out of our control. You know, there's the subjective aspect of it. Do they want an apple, orange, or pear? You know, so it's a beauty contest to a certain degree. In football, if you're 3 points ahead, you're 3 points ahead. You know. So I'm just trying to say is you can't beat yourself up over losses. You have to use it. If you feel that you should have placed higher, what I'm just trying to say is don't pout about it. We've all pouted about it, every competitor, coach, whatever, but just try to take that feeling and just use it to push you to just work harder, you know, add it to your work ethic for the next prep, and analyze yourself internally, analyze the situation.
Well, you know, I don't know if this sport is known for its self-reflection. It's certainly known for its self-criticism.
Like, it's hard, it's hard to.
But it's okay. Like, I think that's on the onus of each individual, right? I mean, we each own a life. You don't own my life. I don't own yours. I own mine. You own yours. We each own one. It's ours. And I'm always telling people, man, champions take ownership. They take ownership of everything. They take ownership of their fucking losses, of their wins, of their learning moments. They own it all. So when they lose, they don't say, "Oh, I should have done this. Is this, you know, this I got robbed." No, maybe so, but they don't. That's not the attitude they have, because that kind of attitude doesn't get them farther. It only puts. Go ahead. Oh no, just say it only puts you behind. It only puts you in when you blame others for your performance. I didn't win because I got robbed. I didn't win because of politics. I didn't win because of XYZ. Then you take away your power for improvement, for learning, and for progress. You literally rob yourself.
Yeah, you're right, because it's like, oh man, I got fucked judging.
Well, that means that the only way that I'm going to get better is if if this outside force agrees with me. It's like saying like if you're late, if you and I have a meeting, and you're 10 minutes late, you say, "Hey, Tad, I'm sorry, traffic was bad." That means that I got to make sure the traffic's okay for you to fucking be on time for a meeting with me? It's like, no, you got to take ownership. You would have to, and just the same way with me, I would have to take ownership of that to be able to say, "Hey, man, traffic might be heavy, but I got to leave 10 minutes early." I mean, that's just the way it goes. And if I'm not, I say, "Hey, man, it's my fault. Sorry, it's bad traffic. It was my fault. I should have left earlier." So, but that's the attitude of a champion who says, "Hey, look, I own this because I know that if I don't own it, I can't improve it."
Speaking of which, when you do get feedback from judges, as you should as a competitor, if it's in person, even if you disagree with what they're saying, because sometimes some judges will, let's be real, sometimes some judges will give a generic, unfortunately, we're talking about, let's say, a national show, whatever. Pro shows, but not as many competitors, you can get more true feedback, but just in general, keep in mind that some of the judges will give you like a generic answer as to why. Don't necessarily take that to heart, but listen, you know, if you have the opportunity to talk to them in person, you know, just don't challenge what they're saying, just take it in.
I do want people to know one really important thing about when you get feedback, because I think it's important. Everything you're saying is absolutely right. Is you know, feedback is important. Don't take it personally. But here's what people have to understand about feedback, about judges' feedback. When you get an opinion from a judge about what you need to improve on, so when you go and watch it, do you like anime, or do you like some of the like photorealistic like CGI movies that they come out with, right?
Sure.
I love all that kind of shit. So when you watch something in CGI, like let's say it's a Marvel movie. It's all supposed to be live action, but 75% of that movie is CGI, so it's like not even real. But we don't know that. We look at it looks real, right? We look at the movie, it looks real, but you know right away when some shit don't look real. Matter of fact, I took courses in animation for my own edification when I was in the Bay Area this is years ago. And because I loved it. I love this stuff. I love all this techie shit. So, and I was really good at the animating part. I wasn't good at the modeling stuff, but I was really good at the animating part. As a matter of fact, my instructors were people who worked at ILM. They worked on Star Wars, on the episode 1, 2, 3. They worked on all these great movies at Pixar. And they said, your eyeballs, your brain knows the difference between what is real and what's not. And so when you animate something and it doesn't look fucking real, everybody in the audience fucking knows it and they can't tell you why. Because there's subtle things that you pick up on when you watch it that you know, like that doesn't look real. You don't know why it doesn't look real, but you know it doesn't look real. Judging's the same way. When I look at a competitor and when two people are standing next to each other, that motherfucker looks better than that guy. Why? Well, if I studied, I can tell you, but sometimes you don't have time for that. Sometimes I don't have time to sit there.
I'm trying to figure out call outs and
I'm trying to go like, hey man, like what's the best selection here? I gotta make this cohesive, and it's gotta match up with the other judges for the most part, because I'm gonna get called out by the head judge and say, hey man, why are your scores so different? Did you see it that way? I have to go, yeah, that's the way I saw it. Okay, because I've had that happen before where, hey man, you got this guy here. Is that where you wanted him? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly where I wanted him. Okay. No one's ever told me to change anything, but they did question me, say, because it doesn't match up with some of the other judges. And hey man, I vote my conscience. No one will ever stop me. I did the same thing in last year's election, our presidential election. So I voted my conscience. I'm going to say it again, like I've said before, because I think this is an important point, that I'd rather make a decision that I'm comfortable with and that I'm happy with than to make a bad choice that forced me to make a bad choice. Like some people voted based on, because I really felt like we had two bad choices. It's like I got two fucking mules here that I don't want to fucking ride the next 4 years. Either one of these motherfuckers, but right. I got to choose one. So I'm not gonna. So what I did was I wrote my own self in and I voted for myself. Now some people would say that's a wasted vote, but it's a vote that I'm fucking comfortable with. I wasn't comfortable with the other votes. So when I'm judging on a judging panel, man, I cast a vote that I feel comfortable with, that I could stand behind in my life. So that's why I did what I did in the election, but that's also what I do when I sit down behind a judging table and I look at athletes. I say, okay. But now, unlike other judges, I definitely always think, what am I going to tell this motherfucker? Because he's going to ask me. I always do, and I always give people 2 or 3 paragraphs of like, this is what I saw. This is what I think you could do to be better. This is why you may have. This is why why they came out the way it did from my perspective. And just take it for what it is. I try to give them I try to give them the good stuff and the bad stuff at the same time, because I think that it's important to know that where your strengths are. Don't fuck these up, but you need to enhance these other things.
What do you think of the 212 division?
So the 212 at the Olympia, I love the 212 division historically, and this year I did too. Of course, Sean Clarita, man, he's awesome. I love Sean, and I knew right away when he came out, I'm like, this motherfucker's going to steal this shit. It's not really stealing. He's going to fucking crush this shit. And he did. And he impressed a lot of people. I really, really like Kamal. I think that from a bodybuilding standpoint, he's better than Sean. His physique is better. But he didn't have the wow factor. And I've said it for years. You got in this sport, especially at the highest level, you got to have a wow factor. Yes. And Kamal has less of a wow factor because he's so balanced and proportioned. He's always, and then of course, what was it?
Derek got 4th, as you know.
Yeah, Derek got 4th, and I think that he's of all the 212 bodybuilders on that stage at the Olympia, he's the best. He's absolutely the best.
Let's be clear, he has the best physique up there.
He's got the best potential.
Yeah, I just wonder. I mean, if open would be.
I told him the same thing. I said I think he is willing to entertain whatever.
I think he's got to do open.
I kind of, I didn't tell him this at the show, but I think I told him. I told him, I said, hey man, would you ever think about like maybe climbing up to the open? He said, well, if my body lets me. He said, I'm going to do whatever I can do, what I need to do. But he said, like if he can't make it down to the 212 anymore, then yeah. Now, I still think that he's got another year in the 212s.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like eventually,
I think he still's got. I mean, look at Flex Lewis. That motherfucker. I don't know how he fucking squeezed down to 212, but somehow he was able to do it every year, coming down from like 200.
Getting down can be very difficult.
I know.
Like Adam, my 212 guy. I mean, it's hard for him to get down. I mean, he gets down, but it's hard. It's a harder division.
Yeah, that's what makes. I do like it. Though.
It's a harder division.
I do like it though, because I like a lot of the guys in the division. They're just stellar guys. But it's always fun because it's close.
It's always close. Generally speaking, the conditioning for the most part will be better in 212.
Yeah, absolutely. For the most part, yeah.
I mean, a lot of it has to do with the challenge of getting down, and it's almost like how it is like it's almost like the U.S. Air Nationals, like the best middleweights are actually technically light heavyweights that come down the middle,
right?
And the best bantamweights are actually middle, and that's how it should be,
Well, I think that's historically pretty accurate for the most part for most competitors.
But not nowadays, not recently.
But maybe not. I mean, I remember the last time I competed I think it was when I won my national title. I was at the North Americans. I was trying. I promised myself that year I would not try to choke down to the light heavy class, but I did, and I barely made it. I weighed in like almost 199, but then I ended up being on stage at about 206 because my body just would not fucking stay there. I forced myself, and I would love to say that was the reason why I won, but I felt like I still looked better at 212 to 217.
Spot, but it's different. It's like I remember 2011, Aaron Clark when he won the heavy USA, and I remember being backstage or at the weigh-ins. I remember he weighed in. He was like 201, right? And they're like, "You want to just come back a couple pounds?" He's like, "Nope, I'm staying right here." By the time he got on stage, he was like 197. Diuretic, whatever. Said 197.
Still won.
He destroyed the whole weight class, and that's what I'm saying. So
that's you don't
always have to be the top of the weight class.
No, not even. No, like look at the year that Tamer won his pro card. Tamer Al-Gundy, he was a light heavyweight. He weighed in at 182 pounds, I believe he told me.
Yeah.
Fucking not even anywhere remotely to the top of that class. And he crushed everybody except for, there was one other guy, I think, who was it that was, him and, I think Pete Ciccone were battling out for a couple years. But Pete's not nearly the same bodybuilder that Tamer is, but he was always in good shape and he was thicker and bigger. He was good. I'm not saying he was a bad bodybuilder, he was very good. But he just wasn't on the same caliber, in my opinion, as Tamer was.
Plus, so much of this is an illusion. It's like Stan Mcquay, for example. Because keep in mind he had 5 pro wins. The first one was when if you remember, the division used to be 202, not 212.
202. That's right. That's right.
From 202 to 210, and then to 212.
12, right.
So he won it when he was 202. He won a 202 show. He won a 210 show, and he won a 212 show. All Olympia qualifications. But his weight was basically, in a sense, the same, even though the weight class went up. So it's funny because he would be on stage at like 199, let's say, 198, and killing guys that would weigh in at 212. And then when he won, he won when he won 212. This was Sacramento, and this is when the division was 212. And he weighed in. He was like 196, 195. And I remember some of the guys that were in that class, they weighed in at 212, and they were like 218 by the time they were on the stage. So it just has it's also an illusion to it.
Oh, totally. I mean, like and the better shape you're in, the bigger you always look. So
no doubt. Sometimes as an expression, I say, sometimes being 4 pounds lighter makes you look 8 pounds bigger.
Oh, totally. The first 6 weeks of every prep that I've ever been on, almost my entire life, people would say, "Oh, you're gaining weight now." I'm like, "No, I'm actually losing weight at about 7 to 9 pounds a fucking week." I'm like, but you look more impressive because muscle is showing. Yeah, it's an illusion. So yeah, and even
it's an illusion because I remember back in when I was competing, as an amateur, and I remember these shows were just massive and there was no other divisions. And it's always the guys that walk around all big backstage, before the weigh-in, it wasn't those guys you have to worry about. It's the little motherfucker in the corner.
It's the guy in the corner he's all sucked in.
And he's eating there, and then he takes his clothes off, and it's what the fuck? It's that guy, the guy who's in the corner who looks miserable with the Skeletor face.
Right.
That's the guy's gonna win the show, not the guy who's walking around all.
Yeah, I used to tell people watch for the guy who looks like he's death warmed over. That's the motherfucker who's going to probably win. That's the guy you want to check out first. But I remember that reminds me, the LA Championships was 2007, I think, when I did it. I won. And I remember that day. I walk in. I weighed in as a heavyweight. So I was like, "Fuck this! I'm just gonna fucking come in wherever I fucking come in." So I came in. I was weighed as a heavyweight. I remember I went into the bathroom before we start pumping up, and it was the prejudging. I went in the bathroom to go take a piss, and I'm in there, and I use the restroom. I'm looking in the mirror, and I take my sweatshirt off. I hit a shot. I was all alone, and I was just checking myself because you get a little nervous, like fucking my abs still there, like, and a couple guys come in, a couple competitors who were in my class, and they're like, and the guy, one of the guys walking, he's like, oh, he takes one look at me, he's like, oh fuck. I'm like, and I turn around and look at him, and he's like, oh, he goes, oh, sorry man, you look really awesome, man. He's like, you're gonna fucking win. And I'm like, thanks, man. You look pretty. I said, you look good too. I'm sure you look good, right? I said, I don't know, man, but I'm just giving my best. He's like, oh man, you look really great. That was a really wonderful moment for me because they were competitors, and they took one look at me, and it was like, that's the response that I always wanted. I didn't care about the trophies. I didn't care about what the judges think. Fuck that shit. I wanted them to think nicely of me. But man, it was always those kinds of accolades from people who are putting that work in, who know what the fucking work I'm putting in. They're putting that same work in, and they see my and they're like, hey man, dude, you look awesome. It was probably my second favorite moment in bodybuilding. My first favorite moment was the first time I did the Emerald Cup in 1991, and I was 20. I was just about to turn 21, and I did this show. Dorian Yates guest posed. I remember he was a fucking monster, and I was a middleweight. I weighed in at 171, and I competed. And I remember I was backstage. I had my sweatsuit on. Back then it was like in 1991. I had a mushroom haircut, had lots of hair, mushroom haircut. Had the fucking MC Hammer baggy pants.
You had a fanny.
I had the fanny pack. I had the fucking big baggy sweatshirt.
You had baggy sweats.
That's right. And I remember I was pumping up backstage in this cramped little. It was in the Maiden Bower. If you remember when it was done at the Maiden Bower. And I remember I take off my sweatshirt, I take off my pants, and I start pumping up some more, and there's these little tiny fucking mirrors on the walls, right? And I'm looking at, and I'm like, and everyone's looking at me weird, and I'm like, why the fuck is everybody staring at me? And I'm 21 years old. This is my third show ever, and I'm like going, and I'm like, man, I must have fucked up. I'm like, I must have fucked up. These people all know I'm a fucking. I'm like, I look like shit. I must look like, and then I catch myself. I catch myself in the mirror against the backdrop of these other guys looking at me, and I can see everything in this mirror. And I realized right then and there, because we're all pumping up, that I look fucking better than them. And I was like, they're not looking at me because I did something wrong. They're looking at me because I'm the guy to beat. And sure enough, I get out on stage. I'm the first guy they call out, center stage. They never move me. I got second by 1 point. And the guy who beat me won the whole show. And I remember his name was Po Bollock. He came to me after the show, and he's like, dude, are you going to... And we were both planning on doing the Pacific... there was a Pacific Oregon show that was next week. And I was going to do that show. But I decided after this show, it was such a tumultuous show for me, I was like, you know what? I did what I needed to do. I learned what I needed to learn, and I'm going to prepare for the USAs. So that's for the next year. I'm going to come back as a fucking light heavyweight, and I'm going to be at the USAs that next year because I qualified. So I said, no, man, I'm not going to be at that next show next week. He's like, oh, good. And that day was a fucking great day for me. Not because I got second, because I would have loved to have won.
Because it was like, because there's basically, like, as we know, the judging is out of our control, but it comes down to what our peers think, right?
Right. Well, no, he was better than me.
For you, right. But for you, like, as you said, when you're warming up at the second best experience, where one of the other competitors is like, man, you look crazy, you're going to win. Like, in a way, like, I'm sure, like, that's more satisfying than what the judges.
Absolutely.
It's just like when because again, it's so subjective. When the other competitors, like, when you're the guy backstage where everyone else is looking at you, that's just the coolest thing there is.
It's just that,
yeah, motherfucker.
Yeah, all this work has amounted to this emotional response.
Yep.
And I loved it. It was like fucking awesome. And I saw it at every show. That third show I did, the Emerald Cup, was is my favorite show. I still have that trophy in my is one of the few trophies that I actually display. Aside from a couple, I have an overall trophy and I have some other, but it's my favorite one because it has such good memories associated with it. And it's that feeling of, I felt like, and I hope every athlete feels this way at some point in their career. I felt like I was accomplishing my goals. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm fucking doing this. It was great.
This is full circle to what we were talking about earlier. There has to be, like, when all is said and done, I'm going to say this cliche, corny as fuck. When you hang up the posing trunks, you want to look back. There should be moments.
Absolutely.
There should be these moments. There should be the moments of, realizing, wow, there was an improvement. because that's what's in our control, right? There should be just things like, like the dinners that are eaten after the show's over. There should be memories that should last a lifetime, And that's what I'm saying. So you need to keep evaluating. To get better and better as a competitor, you have to like it. It shouldn't be a chore. I know this sounds very generic, what we're talking about, and very one-to-one, but
no, you're right.
It shouldn't be a chore. You should actually all these things are hard, obviously, but
if you have to force yourself,
enjoy the process.
If you have to begrudgingly do your second session of cardio or get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do cardio, if that's a pain for you, this isn't your sport. Sorry, it's not just it's like it's not your sport. Like, it's okay. It's not your sport. But if you
play croquet,
that's true. Like, and that's okay. Some things just aren't our cup of tea. I can tell you one thing. Like, there's lots of stuff that's not my cup of tea. I don't try to make it any more than it is. But I do know that, man, this sport was tailor made for me. I was willing to put all kinds of energy and effort into this shit without anything coming back to me. And if I can get that across to people, because it'll all come to you, but not when you necessarily expect it.
Yep.
It's like you have to.
There's also the delusional aspect of, I want to turn pro and make a lot of money.
And that's great too. Hey man, go for it. I'm not here to tell you that's not going to happen, but probably not the way you think it's going to happen. Maybe will. But
no. I get enough. Some people it's not the like how it was in the early 2000s when there was these big,
contracts,
whatever, and now let's be clear here. It's the promoters. That's what I'm saying. So you really have to have. Certainly bodybuilding can be used as a platform. Personal training, online coaching, other businesses. But again, you have to really enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise,
and I think that people look at, like we were talking about the Olympia results, and people look at these the results in the Olympia contest, like the Mr. Olympia contest, and we see the best of the best on stage. And all of these athletes, they're doing what we're saying. They love what they do. At least most of them. At least I think that 99% of them, they love what they do. They're passionate about it. They don't make excuses, and they're doing the work. Now, most people, I remember I used to have kids come up to me all the time. Like, I'd be 270 pounds, and they come up to me and say, "Hey, I want to be. How do I get to be just like you?" And I used to tell them, like, you're not going to like the answer. And one, and two, you couldn't maintain it if you wanted, because I've watched you, and I know what you do, and you're going to have to change so much about yourself that I don't know if that's really feasible for you to do right now. Because what it takes to maintain this, when I was competing every year, I was 250 to 270 off season. Never been above 10% in my life. It's like, I wasn't pretty, but I was big. And I said, here's what it takes. It takes a full-time fucking eating job. That's number one. I'm watching the clock to eat 7 meals a day. I'm training 2 to 3 hours a day. 2 hours of weight training, an hour cardio. I'm doing this every fucking day. Can you do that? I'm sleeping. I got to sleep at least 8 to 9 hours a night. Can you do that? I have to manage my stress. Can you do that? Can you keep your life stable so that you can run this program that's going to help you become the champion that you want? Most people can't. You got girlfriend problems, you're fucked. You got wife problems, you're fucked. You got kid problems, you're fucked. You have to be able to have a lifestyle that is congruent with being able to put all these pieces together, or you're going to have problems. Not that you can't do it, but you will have difficulties maintaining it.
Yep, and then you're going to have anger for the sport, because when you start, then you're going to be resentful, and then you can say, "Oh, that guy just looks better than me because he takes more fucking drugs," and there's all the excuses and the blame. So, as you said,
you got to be
a core piece. It's not just the commitment is a given. Everything you just said.
Anybody can do that.
You don't realize how hard.
But can you carve out a lifestyle that is going to be congruent with getting all the things that you have to get done and providing the least amount of stress in the mean? I know some people, their wives just can't do this. They just can't do this lifestyle. It's just not for them, because they have to support this bodybuilder or this person in the sport, and that's just not their skill set. It's okay.
That's one thing. That's right. And the relationship situation. And I find this too. If you're miserably doing the show, trying to get ready, or being a bodybuilder, just because and you feel like I'm going to put my whole life into this at the same time, those are the ones where you see the marriages that fail. You see literally putting everything in one, all the eggs in one basket. however you want to say it. And like a lot of times there is that disappointment. So you need to have, there has to be a balance. You need to be able to, as you said, carve out a particular lifestyle to have the structure to do that. And that's half of it. The other half is like, again, like you need to.
Well, there's also another reason why people like, when I've talked to Derek or I've talked to Sean Clarita, when they talk about their success, like Sean will tell you, man, I couldn't do it without my wife. I can't do it without my wife because he gets. I sat and had dinner with him after the show at the gala.
You need the support system, yeah.
And that's all he talked about. All he talked about was how great his wife was, how he could have done it without her, and how he's like, let me show you, Ted. Let me show you all the texts I send her every day about the food I want her to make me when I'm done off this diet. I'm like,
he probably couldn't do it without her. Like, by the way,
no, he couldn't.
The expression, it takes a, what is it? It takes a village to raise a body.
Absolutely.
But it's like,
it's a wonderful expression.
If you, listeners, competitors, if you're getting ready for a show and you're serious about this, be cool to the people around you. Be cool to your wife or girlfriend, Don't bark at people. It's going to be, you're going to be hungry, miserable sometimes for not eating, whatever. But don't take it out on the people that are around you that are trying to be cool to you, because it can wind up kick you in the ass when after the show's over. Like, let's say, if you're an asshole to everyone around you, and all of a sudden you're eating the week after the show, you feel great, and you're wondering why people are not they didn't enjoy your journey because you were a dick to everybody. It's like, so what I'm saying is, if you want to have their support work, I do want to do better next year. I got feedback from the judges. I want to put a better package on stage. All I can say is be cool to your wife or girlfriend or support system around you, so that when you do it again, because it's in a,
that's right.
You have people are cool. Okay, well, we got your back again, rather than, oh shit, this again. So create a healthy environment around you so that you're grounded going into the situation where, as you said, you have to have that kind of discipline. So you might as well make an environment that's correct and conducive to what's the effort that's needed to get you there.
And it's not always it's not always clear to athletes and to people what is required of the sport. So that's why I tell people, like, hey, it's okay. It's okay if you find out after you compete once or twice that it's not for you. It's okay. But it's not okay to treat everybody like shit.
Right.
It's like, okay, I get it. Hey, I've been there, man. I've been hangry. I've been depleted. I've been for weeks on end. Never, like, I had diets where I didn't have cheat meals for over 6 months. Never cheated. Never deviated once. Did 3 hours of cardio a day, 2 hours of working out. That's 5 hours of fucking work in the gym. I did that shit for 6 months before, so I could get ready for my first USA attempt. I wouldn't do that again. Don't. I would have better. I have better dieting tactics now. But I was 23 years old, and but I'm telling you, man, I was willing to put everything on the table. That doesn't. I'm going to tell you, I've worked with several thousand people over the years, and very few of them are really willing to do that. It's not a bad thing. It's just what it is.
You've got to be able to. One thing I can say is that, I don't want us to sound like dinosaurs. We're saying back in the day, but like there's one thing in the work ethic. I think today with people are, for example, they'll do an exercise in the gym that looks cooler on the gram to do a video. Hammer strength looks better than a incline barbell, whatever it is. I'm just saying that people, the work ethic, I think one reason why those guys look better in the 90s, and, in some ways, just because I think in some ways physiques were kind of cooler looking back then. I think really just because of the work ethic. I mean, there's right now, the guys are bigger, there's more volume. There's more drugs.
So
there's more eating. There's more food. The guys are bigger. But for example, sometimes you see these guys there's a hammer strength. There's a back that was built on hammer strength, and there's a back that looks like it was built on compound rows. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of times the work ethic is just I think that people have the cart in front of the horse very often. People just emphasize drugs first. And
well, look, you ask who's driving the conversation. Those conversations, it's people who are younger. And it's because they just want things right now. It's because they want some results right now. And they feel, and adequately so, that you'll get faster results with drugs. And you do.
But of course, drugs are needed. But Tad, you've seen some of these cycles where 4 grams a week of tests, 3 grams a week of trend. It's like, mind you, just to remind everybody, I've talked to Jordan Yates several times. When he was doing his Olympias, he would open up 3 76 milligram ampules of Parabol a week, and that was it. Now we have guys in the fucking competing in the novice division taking 5 times the amount of shit that he was. I mean, literally, it's like.
Well, they think that
the abusive stuff. It's like trend, for example. There's so much abuse. It's like people don't understand. Like, guess what? If you are sensitive to progesterone subdivisions into progestin, if you're sensitive to what the effects of progestin, trend can have an indirect effect on elevating estradiol on some people.
Absolutely.
Right? And some people get trend doesn't aromatize, but again, some people are sensitive to progestin, which is the subdivision hormone. I know I'm repeating it. And that has an indirect effect of being catalyst of raising estradiol. So that yet they're taking 3 grams a week of it, let alone maybe they're not even a candidate for trend to begin with, Right. I mean, you and I, we got to do a seperate show just on talking about these candidates.
I know the drug pieces. The drug piece is really fascinating. It's evolved so much over the years.
Yeah.
It's because you mentioned the Physiques in the 90s, and I'm a product of the 90s, 80s and 90s. That's when I started. I started in '85, and so are you. And so when we started, there was less emphasis on the drugs and more emphasis on the training. And I think that's what we're seeing, at least in our own anecdotal experience, is that we're seeing that the conversations that are going on around this sport today have more to do with drugs and less to do with training. The conversations the conversations you and I were used to hearing in the gyms and at the shows and with experts was about training and about that kind of thing. And it's not that one's better than the other; they're both needed. Yep. But they're not, and they should be. They need to go hand in hand. I think that you're right. There is a work ethic that is not the same at its heart, at its root, that it was in the '90s. I'm not sure why.
I've seen people in the '90s have a budget cycle where they couldn't afford shit, sleeping on their friends' couches, whatever. Work their fucking ass off in the gym, busted their ass, and pull up a pro card.
Yeah,
guys had everything handed to them, taking 5 times the amount of shit. And then they're lazy. They miss cardio sessions. Their glutes are soft on stage because they're fucking cheating. It's just, you've seen it all. So
that Emerald Cup I told you about in '93 or 91 that I did. This is no lie. This was my contest cycle. 12 weeks out, I had 8 ampules of Sustanon. I had 2 weeks prior to the show. I had 100 tabs of clenbuterol. That's it. I ran out of shit a couple of weeks before the show. I started clenbuterol 2 weeks out of the show. That's all I had. I was literally running on nothing, and I still got second and almost won by 1 point. Almost won.
And because of your work ethic.
That's right. I was putting 3 hours, 4 hours in the gym every day.
Yeah. Your work ethic. Do you remember Renel Jean-Vier?
Oh, dude, I was inspired. That dude had crazy striations.
So I used to train with him, and this is 1989 we're talking about, 1990.
You did?
91,
he was awesome.
He took second to Sean. Remember when he took second to Sean Ray at that Arnold?
He just needed to be fuller.
I'm sorry. Yeah, he looked so crazy. But this guy, okay, he was, wow, going back. Okay, so he was living, you guys got to understand, this is 1990. He was training for the Arnold Classic. This is I lived in New York, and he was in Connecticut. We lived 20 minutes away. He picked me up and go to the gym. He was living with a stripper at the time. This lady was like a 40-year-old Russian lady. He was like 30, whatever.
Hold it, a 40-year-old Russian stripper?
Yeah,
oh my God,
she was like paying all the bills, But anyway,
that's a joke all in by itself.
He had no money. So his cycle for this Arnold Classic, where he took second to Sean Ray, arguably we should have won. He literally was taking 1 Zambon ampule of Winstrol every other day, 1 Anadrol a day, and clenbuterol, and that was his cycle. Literally, that was it.
That's it?
That was it. I witnessed it.
Okay.
And he was a fucking freak. I mean,
I should say
he was. What do you call it again? He was from Tahiti.
Tahiti.
Not
all those.
Tahiti. Yeah. He was French. He was from what's the African country that they speak French. He was Haitian. He was Haitian.
Oh, Haitian. Oh, it was Haiti. I was from Haiti.
Yeah, he was from Haitian. So he would drink wine every day with his meals. He basically had like a keto diet. I mean, he would pose for like 2 hours a day. Like he would pose himself hard, And
well, it sure the fuck showed, man. That dude, I remember just looking at pictures of his glutes, going, "That's gonna be me on stage. That's gonna be me on stage." I remember I'm gonna do this. That's all I needed, man. I needed was someone to show me that I could do it.
Yeah, he didn't do all these drugs, but what he did do was he did an hour of step mill in the morning, or Stairmaster. That's when the Stairmaster was out. He did an hour a night. He basically ran a keto diet during the day. and he would pose for like 2 hours a day. Like he would just pose, and he just created this. He just carved himself out on like minimal drugs. So as you said, it comes down to work ethic. I mean, look what you pulled off at that show, just using some sustanon and some clen for 2 weeks.
That's it. That's all I had.
Your work ethic is what got you there, and like that's what's missing. I don't want to be like, oh, back in the day. I don't want to sound like one of these old fart fucking.
No. If it's applicable, it's applicable.
Which I am. I admit it. But if you can hybrid as a competitor, guys, if you with a well thought out nutritional program and prep and gear, you're going to be successful. So don't rest on the laurels of your gear.
Well, the gear doesn't do anything. It just it's like food. It's like vitamins. I mean, we need these things for this sport to be at the highest levels, but they don't win shows, not by themselves. They don't win shows. No. Some of the I mean, just so many wonderful stories of people think, oh yeah, I must be using a ton of gear, but I'm like, if you only knew, then you'd realize that you're a loaf.
That's what I'm saying. Like these guys, the competitors, listeners, get ready for this. I know this is not a very sexy answer. It's not what you want to hear, but believe it or not, those guys that you see on the Olympia stage, they're not taking the amount of shit that you think. There's amateurs who think, man, I know those guys with their, and
they're taking a boatload of shit.
They're taking the 5 energy all day and the 2 grams a week of tren and the 2 grams a week of EQ. Guess what? I hate to disappoint you guys, but those people you see on stage, the top pros, whatever, everyone's taking drugs. It's neat, as you said, whatever. But I'm just letting you know that is genetic predisposition and
a lot of work.
Let's talk about genetics because, guys, you can take all the drugs in the world. All you're going to do, you can put lipstick on a pig. If you don't have the genetic predisposition, all these drugs, they can only enhance what you have genetically. They can't create what you do not have genetically. And that's something that's very hard to grasp for some people.
Well, I mean, you can get drugs that help you get bigger. It can help you lose fat, but it's not going to change your structure, and it's not going to change how your muscles look. Your muscles are going to develop exactly the way they're supposed to. That's right. And sorry, like that's what God gave you. That's what you got. So
yeah, like if you don't have round muscle bellies, taking 2 grams a week of tren will not round out your muscle belly. If you have a wide hip structure, if your squamous, if your skin is not genetically fit, there's so many different genetic variables. If they're not there, again, the drugs will only augment what you have there. They can't create what you do not have.
So speaking of which, that was one of the. So we talked about the 212 division at the Olympia. That's the only criticism I have of Sean Clarita is I don't like his use of side oils. I don't like him.
You shut up.
I don't know if he's. It's only in the shoulders that I don't like it, and he's got a weak chest, and so he needs to fill out his chest. He knows this, but he's got narrow clavicles. He's got a narrow shoulder width. But he's got well developed shoulders, and he's crazy sick looking.
Yep.
He looks awesome. He gets in great shape, but the lumpy bumpy thing across the shoulders doesn't do anything for me. And I wish he would stop.
Don't get me wrong. I think hands down he won. There's no.
Hands down, easy. No.
And again, I just think I think the oil is a little too. It's my opinion. It's your opinion as well, but
just too much.
It's a little sightly.
I just wish that I don't mind people using that stuff, but when you could see it where it looks unnatural, then I think it works against you. When you could just use it to augment, to help. Because I remember I tried this back at, like around 2000 when people first started to talk about it, like 1999, 2000. I tried it for about 6 months to see if it would have an effect on my physique, and I found that it can during off season. Absolutely help stretch out fascia and help to create to get past sticking points. But when I tried it for a couple of shows, it just creates water between the cells, and you could easily see this. Now
it can look blurry.
It could look blurry, very blurry. So unless you're going to start squeezing, and you can do that, but you make other concessions when you do that. You know that diuretics are non-selective. They're going to take water out of the system, so they're non-selective. You're just hoping that you're going to retain it where you need it.
You're hoping it's going to be more sub-Q and not intramuscular.
Right. I mean, there are ways to help safeguard, but you never all diuretics work the same way. They drop minerals. When you drop minerals, what happens? You drop water. That's the whole deal. Well, guess where some of those minerals get held? In the muscles, in the heart, kind of some important places. So we don't want to have any of those problems. So it's easier, I'd say, to take your. I don't know. I guess my advice to him would be lighten up on some of the shoulders stuff. Just lighten up on it. That's it.
But other than that, he won as far as he won as soon as they came out in the quarter tournament.
That's my only criticism.
Yeah.
But I do think that it wouldn't take much for Derek Lunsford to fucking crush that class if he can get his shit really tight fast.
Yeah.
He just comes in. It's really weird. I told him this on I'm going to release his podcast pretty soon. I just talked to him Friday. I told him, I felt like, and you tell me what you think. I felt like when he first stepped out there, I was like, man, he fucked this up. I'm like, oh shit, this sucks. He doesn't look as good. I can see the water on him, but then he turned around and the backside he looks good. He looked really hard, really, really ripped. And then as he posed, and Steve kept him out there a long time, he started looking better and better and better and better and better and better. And then he got this little burst of energy. And I remember I asked him about that. I saw like midway through, man, you get this little burst and you're like, all of a sudden, man, you're making a comeback. Because I thought, he's done. He's not even going to make top 5.
Like in defense, to give him credit, if you remember as the initial call-outs, he was originally positioned like 7th.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I thought
he worked. He did harden up as the rounds went on, and he worked his way in.
He worked his way back up.
Yep. So credit to that. But
yeah, and you could tell, like, he even told me that his attitude was much better this year than last year. Last year he was very disappointed, and he's like, I remember him telling me this backstage. He said, "Hey, I don't understand. I get these comments about I should come in like this, I should come in like this. I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, and some of it's working, some of it's not." He says, he's like, I don't know what to do sometimes. I said, well, I think that it's just like he's still young enough that he hasn't quite locked down this last couple of weeks here that he needs to. I think he needs to diet more. Now he told me he diets a long time, and he doesn't look like he's out of shape, but something is keeping that skin thick from the front, not from the rear. His glutes are fucking there. His back, it's there. It's his front.
Usually, what's interesting is usually it's the other way around.
The reverse. It's usually the other way around. Exactly.
Yeah,
and I think
I'm sure they'll figure it out. He's got a good coach.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll figure it out. I know he's good. Yeah, and I have a sneaky suspicion he's gonna have a coach change. Sneaky suspicion. He didn't say it, but I sense energy, and I think he's gonna get tired of some of the stuff. It's like his coach, like this, I think his current coach, he's working for a long time, and I think maybe most of the time when guys like this, younger guys come up when they've been working with somebody, if their coach isn't experienced enough, they'll usually need to move up to somebody who has more experience. There's nothing wrong with that. No harm in that. No shame in that. But no matter what, I think that he did well, and I think that he'll continue to do better. I think he still has another year in that 212 class. What did you think about the? Well, we had changes in almost every division except for figure, which I think Sydney can walk on water, so I think she's awesome. So, and I think that was an easy choice. That was easy. Easy.
Good job.
The bikini. Most people get confused with bikini. They're like, I don't know how they all look really good. No, you're just horny. That's just what that's what that means. They don't. But it was an incredible lineup, and I thought that it was easily. I thought, okay, Janet was an easy winner this year. It was easy for me to see that. But a lot of other people didn't like it, and a lot of people thought that the industry was paving the way for her because she was on all the posters. I don't know if you remember when we were walking through. Sure. She's on the posters, not the current Olympia at the time, not the current Olympia champion. Bikini champion wasn't up there. It was her. And they thought, they were just kind of doing. I think they were old posters. That's what I think. But I could be wrong.
I gotta say that bikini probably is the hardest one to judge.
It's not for me, but but for many people it is. But for me, maybe it's because I don't know. I guess at all the shows I judge, I'm always like the bikini.
I'd be picking all the Asian girls.
I have a proclivity for the Asian persuasion myself. I am Japanese, but it's just a personal thing. It's not my only.
I'm married to a Korean,
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm actually a sliver back in the recesses of my Japanese head. I'm a sliver Korean. Really am. I have a little bit of Korean in me. And if there's one good thing about Koreans, I'll tell you, and I hate making blanket statements, but I'm gonna because it's part of my race. They have the best fucking skin. The Koreans, all the Asian, they have the best skin, man. Just perfect fucking skin. And if you go to Asia, anywhere, Thailand, China, you name it, they all focus on skin.
Yep.
You can't go, like when I was in Thailand, you couldn't go anywhere downtown without throwing a rock and hitting a place that would take care of your skin.
When my wife goes in the backyard, we have like some orange trees in the backyard and stuff. She'll go back there. She wears the whole the face blast, the face shield, and the gloves, and just they cover everything because it's true. It's all about skin integrity.
I was out and we were at an island in Thailand, off the coast of Thailand, and my girlfriend and my ex-girlfriend and I, and we were out there and I'm like, it's the middle of the day, bro. It's like, I shit you not, man. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It is perfect weather. It's 90 something degrees. There's and I'm like, and we're right there by the ocean, a private beach. And there's nobody out there except for me and a 15-year-old girl. We're out there swimming, and I come back and I'm like, honey, she's sitting in there having a drink, and I'm like, her and her mom. Her mother was from Singapore, and she was born in Bangkok, but she lived in Chicago.
Right.
And I said, is there something wrong? I said, did we get here at the wrong time or something? She's like, no, Tad, wait till 5:30 when the sun starts to go down. Everyone, their grandmother will be out here. Sure enough, sure as shit, as soon as that motherfucking sun started coming down, all these Chinese people came out. I was like, where? I was like,
they want to wait for the sun to come down.
They didn't want the sun. Yeah, she said, nobody wants to be in the sun, Tad, because you look like a field worker. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, that's what it is. They don't want to look like they're a laborer. And I'm like, they want to look white. I'm like, well, fuck that. I want to look like I'm digging in the trenches then. Shit, I want to look dark.
It's actually very true. There's like a caste system over there in a way.
Absolutely. Yep. I know that. Yeah. It's kind of sad.
I think there's still shrinking feet over there in the shoes too.
They do some of the binding still, but it's not as nearly as acceptable as it used to be. But that is that foot binding. That's some weird shit. Because
it's actually really like the
they start to curl. They start to and it's like, and they basically maim themselves on purpose, and so they can't walk. These women can't walk, and there are elderly women who still come from that era in China where they foot bound, and it was supposed to be very attractive, and I to me it feels like this is patriarchy at its best. This is a bunch of dudes who figured, I don't want my wife to go anywhere, so let's fucking bind their feet out so they can't fucking go anywhere.
Right.
That's what it feels. That's what it feels like to me. I don't know.
That vanity is based on insecurity, right?
Yeah, and we'll just tell them it's pretty. They'll believe us if we tell them enough. I've seen some pictures, man, and that just looks fucking gross.
I know the fucking feet are like folded back.
And they're all, paper. It looks like it's like, ugh. Yeah. I'm like, oh my, and doesn't it hurt? I don't know, man, but I guess if you do it slow, it just sort of slowly deforms the bones.
Yeah, but still, what the fuck? I know, it's just crazy. Certain cultures.
Every culture's got something, right? Like there's some African cultures that have the rings. They have the rings in the neck and the rings in the nose, the rings in the lips.
Oh, there's all types
of
shit. Think about it. Or, circumcision at 13, no thanks.
So what?
Circumcision at 13.
That's just called fucking pain. What the fuck? Cutting on your dick at 13?
White people would do that.
Why would you do that? Oh my God. That window closed.
They cut off the girl's clitoris at age 13 so they can't feel pleasure. Man, what a crazy fucking world.
I know. Oh my God. Yeah, well, I'm glad that only a small part of the world believes in this shit. I want my daughter to feel everything in her life, to have everything in her life, no dismemberment, no disfigurement, no need for that shit. So let's. Before I talk about the Open, I'm going to tell you about. I was happy to see that Brandon won the men's physique division. Brandon Hendrickson, he looked awesome. He really does have a stellar physique. I don't know what your interpretations were, but.
Yeah, I could see I could see him winning. There's actually, believe it or not, I was a little disappointed because I felt that there's some guys who actually, one guy I felt should have been top 3 easily. I believe his name is Stephen Cannell. He's coached by Ariel Kutz.
Okay, I'd have to see his picture. I don't know.
Yeah, he's phenomenal, and I just felt like he could have easily been in the top 3. He was completely overlooked, And honestly, in a way, I think men's physique is very difficult. It's even harder to judge. I think it might be the hardest division, just because. I don't know. There's.
Well, you have to. It's like bikini. You tote the standard. So, men's physique is like bikini in the sense that it's sandwiched between these two divisions where you have men's bodybuilding and then, or you have women's bodybuilding, you have women's physique, and bikini and figure are kind of somewhere on the fringes.
Yeah.
And so the sport is it about muscle? Is it about conditioning? What is it about?
It's crazy because it's like with the women's division, here's how I see it. It's almost like now bikini is now figure is now women's physique is now women's body. It's almost like it's changed that way. It evolved. I think you're right. It can be perceived that way. I think we're always refining the standards because you know why? Not because the powers that be want to, but because the people that compete, they're doing it by who's showing up and what they look like. And you have to evolving.
Yeah, you have to as a judge, you have to judge who's the best on stage today. It doesn't mean that that's the standard that we want every competition to be like. It means this is who showed up today, and here's the best. So and that includes the Olympia.
Hence the variations of the subjectiveness.
That's right. And so, like for instance, this year, when it comes to things like, well, I mean, there was a lot of great guys in the men's physique class. I really felt like Brandon, this was his year to come back and win it again. There were a few people that I thought, wow, okay. But I saw why the decisions were made. I'll tell you one thing. When I looked at the figure division, there was a lady there. I forgot her name. I started following her on Instagram because she's from Korea. She's Korean. But there were several Koreans in figure and in bikini, and they were fucking great. I was like,
there was some Korean
yes.
as well.
I was like, oh my god, I'm glad to see my Asian brothers coming.
That Korean girl, I think she got fourth.
In figure. She was awesome.
She fucking should have won. I'm sorry,
dude. I had her high. I was sitting next to my buddy. I'm like, "There's my future wife."
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But she fucking honestly, she looked unreal. Like
she did.
I thought she should have won.
I was like
winning figures.
I didn't have her winning because she doesn't have all the. But oh my gosh, she should be in physique. I mean, or something. I mean, like, but she just had a. She had great, and she was fucking wide. See how wide she was? She had broad shoulders.
She's a hybrid too. She can easily be. She's like Shanique. She can easily be women's physique too.
I thought physique, wellness, whatever, man. Go for it. Like, don't do figure. You're too big.
Legs are
crazy, and she was pretty. And she was pretty
because of her. She's being that way pretty. Maybe I was like, oh, there's a winner.
No,
you're. Yeah. Like I can't like my. My opinion might be a little bit,
Well, you're allowed to have your preferences. We all are. I have my preferences too. But when it comes, but yes, the open division. So like, it was interesting. I was filming. I was sitting down in the green room and I was waiting for the result. And my buddy and I had my Instagram story on, and I'm filming on my forward face, on my back camera. I'm filming Chad and Dennis because they're standing next to they're waiting on pins and needles fucking right to see what I knew he was going to win. I knew Rami was going to win. I mean, I figured he would. I didn't know, but I figured he would. And I wanted to catch their reaction on film. And of course they had the reaction I thought. They were jumping in the air and they gave each other a hug and it was fucking awesome. But what did you think of what did you think of that debate of the open, the Mr. Olympia?
Well, I got to say, like, and people like, keep an eye on, you and I are right there. You and I were literally backstage, look to our perspective. I'm a full Heat fan. When everybody came out, when Rami, because he came out before then, when he came out in the individuals, and I was like, fuck, okay. I was like, okay, this is clearly the best he's been,
Yes.
And then when Phil came out, when he first walked out, I thought, okay, but then I just realized right away it was pretty evident that he did not have the same. We talked about the wow factor, and there was. I want people to understand it wasn't just the midsection that was the issue. He did lose volume. He lost volume. Anterior delt, upper chest, brachial head, all that variant was just not as blown out and voluminous as it normally was, and the legs were definitely did not have the same amount of volume. And I also noticed that his glutes and hams, although they were in and they were relatively carved out, they still didn't have that cosmetic, grainy relief to it. And that's what Phil. And when he hit his rear double, keep in mind, normally, when Phil hits a rear double, he pushes his hip flexors forward. The glutes are like they carve, right? And he leans back, and those rhomboids like in your face. It just didn't. It just didn't happen, And then the comparisons went on, and then he started. Then the abdominal I'm sure you saw the same thing. So you can actually really see the integrity of the mesh in the abdominal area just wasn't there. And he kept the abdominal region, like you could tell that it's just, they weren't just pulled in and just.
I don't know if it was you and I that were talking about it or not, but or somebody, I can't remember who I was talking to. I was talking to maybe a physician or somebody, and they just said that it takes much, much longer than just a year to really have that adhere correctly, so it's going to look. So I just don't think that he had enough time to be able to make it look normal again. His abs, at least.
You told me you have that visceral sheath.
That's right.
And you start, you feel like it's mended. You start training squat. Like, this is not like a normal person recovering from a mesh surgery and they're
no.
Doing rows, 375 or whatever heavy compound. So I think you're right. There's no way that it could just stick, right? So there is that, and then there was, he felt like he was aware of it as well as we could see he was aware of it. Then there's cortisol. Then there's more fading because your cortisol level.
And I could feel. I knew right away when he walked out. And I said this before. I knew when he lost the first time, his energy wasn't the same. And when he walked out this time, it was fucking really clear. I know he had doubts, and that's not something that he needed to have in that moment.
No, because we were backstage, and I was even looking at him backstage where he's looking at himself in the mirror, and he's looking at his abdominal region. So he knew. And as you said, that energy, you could sense that energy when they walk out.
He didn't have the same. I just remember in previous years. I don't know because I've been at every Olympia that he's been in, and he would come out, and you see his silhouette, and I could feel the energy. And he bounces his shoulders a little bit, and know what he's really saying is, "I'm gonna fuck this up." He's like, you guys are gonna get fucked up in about 2 seconds, and then the lights show up, and everyone goes, "Wow!" And this time. He just came out and he just didn't have that same swagger. He didn't have that same. No, the energy wasn't there. It wasn't there, and I'm like, and it wasn't there because he was focused on these things that weren't quite as what he normally would used to see.
He was aware of it and translated that way. Now, as far as the other placings, I got to tell you this. So Brandon, I thought he looked awesome, but to me, I had to say this, but to me, he reminded me more of the 2018 Brandon. Like, to be honest with you, I mean, I know some people are going to disagree, but just being there, whatever. To be honest with you, I would have had Rami first. Believe it or not, I would have had Hadi Chop in second, and then Brandon, and then I would have had probably Phil in fourth. It's hard for me to say because but then again, when I say that, but at the same time, I think Brandon, he was complete, he was in shape. If anything, he was even harder. I felt he was actually a little bit harder and drier this year than last year.
Oh, I think he was.
Yeah, no, he was. I just don't think he was quite as voluminous. So I don't have to really.
Well, not when you're standing next to fucking Big Rami. When you're standing next to Rami, everybody looks like they need to fill out a little bit more. So that's one thing that he didn't have to do last year. He didn't have to stand next to Rami. So, but I do think that he. I thought that I can't argue with the top four placings. I like him. I'll tell you who I was disappointed in. I was disappointed in Hadi's. I'm going to make it. I like Hadi Chopin, but I was disappointed when he came backstage after. I could tell he was upset for not winning, and he came back and he didn't want to take pictures with his medal. I think it was, and I don't know why. These are professional photos that the Mr. Olympia takes, and they're going to go on posters, and you're supposed to have your medal on, all this kind of stuff. And he didn't want to do it. He took them without the medal on. Okay, fine. And because I think he was probably upset. I don't know. I just think that he's got such popularity. So many people like him. Man, honor that. Honor that.
Yeah. No, I saw he was disappointed when he came back, and
I like him. I think he's a great bodybuilder.
I guess of him not wearing the medal was his way of saying, his way of being symbolic of I don't agree with the placing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He probably and by the way, I want to say this. It's really important that since then, because I did a lot of coverage for the Olympia, I got a lot of people who messaged me afterwards, and most of the questions, I'm not kidding you, this year and last year was, why didn't Hadi win? And there are always some people from fucking. The Middle East or somewhere else, some other countries, who really, really love him. They're never people from here. It doesn't matter where they come from. I understand he's well loved and he's a great bodybuilder. Why didn't he win? Well, you're gonna have to ask the judges that. I don't think he won because he's still a 5'7" bodybuilder trying to compete against a guy who's fucking clearly outweighing him by almost 100 pounds.
Well, let's just say this: as far as who the clear winner was, there is no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, easy, hands down.
It was really
well.
When you think about it, it was really one of the most like.
It was closer than people think, though. I'm going to tell you that from a points thing. It was very, very close. Closer than people think.
From first and second, or from
first and second? First and second.
Really?
Yes, it was closer than people think. It was not an easy decision. So I hope that I hope Dennis and I hope that
But I got a question for you.
I hope his coaches could know that like this was not a fucking cakewalk. He needs to continue to come in better.
What I mean is, do you feel that it was close, not because so much physique-wise, but because this is the reigning Mr. Olympia, and
because it's because Brandon presents a package that is clearly an aesthetically more pleasing package. It's clearly the when I think of bodybuilding, it's got this is what the greatest bodybuilder's got to have these components. He's got them. But Ramy wins. Why? Because Ramy was more impressive, right? He wasn't necessarily a better bodybuilder, even though he was better on that day, on that decision. Right. But you got to look at the history, right? He's been at the Olympia how many times now, and always falling short. Everyone's like Ramy, and he falls short. So granted, the one time he comes in close to the mark, he's going to get accolades. He's going to get them because, and he's going to be judged better. Now, next year, he's going to have a harder time.
With Brandon, you think?
Just retaining the title in general, he's going to have a harder time. Whether it be Brandon or...
I think he might hold on to it for a bit.
I think he's going to hold on to it because I think he's going to do more. But he's going to have to do more. He's going to have to make sure... He can't show up like he did 2 years ago, 2 years ago. He can't show up that way. He's not going to win. And he can't just be a big guy.
One thing... what's her name in the physique division, in classic physique? Shanique, if you don't come in how you were condition-wise, you're setting a bar. And as you said, he can't come in like I was 3 years ago, otherwise he'll be back in third or fourth, whatever. No, and you're exactly right. And it should be that way. But I think that like when now they have the title, I mean like, shit, man, I would even be like, come in even a couple times later, get even more pulled in.
There's no need for him to gain any more muscle.
No.
There's no need. He's got no purpose. It's not going to help him, and it won't serve his title.
He was lighter this year, and to me, he looked bigger.
He looked better. I like the way he looked better this year. I still think that he still looks a little bit like a bunch of fucking big body parts thrown onto a frame, but he's getting better, and he's getting closer and closer to this aesthetic that is much, much better. Now,
imagine if he was like to the point where his cheekbones are sticking out of his face, and he was like 6 or 7 pounds lighter.
He'd be unfucking real.
Right.
He'd be shit they want to put into movies and shit.
But again, even at that level, it's hard to, like the
somebody
in your mind. Am I getting,
So now somebody told me, I bet you, here's my prediction, man. Kai Green's going to come out of retirement. He's going to compete next year. What do you think about it? No, see, I don't think so either.
No, he's not.
I haven't talked to him, but I don't think so.
No, but I've heard he's just not.
Yeah, I don't think
it's like this. You have to understand too. Keep in mind, right?
But wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be a cool show?
It'd be fucking awesome. If you also keep in mind now, it's been 4 years since he's been on stage.
Yeah.
And the last show, he didn't even complete the night show. If you remember, this was
I don't remember that.
Yeah, he didn't complete the night show. Remember, he came back and gave a speech, said he wasn't feeling good.
Oh, that's right. Fuck, I totally forgot about that. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. So now, when you see the videos that he's doing, the training videos, when he's goofing around, everyone, who doesn't love Kai, right? He's got the big afro thing that he's, these things. And to me, though, I'm not saying he's getting like that older looking, like where the waist is starting to come out more, and he's starting to get like the, whatever you want to call it, like where the arms, the limbs are starting to dissipate a little bit in the width of the waist. I'm not saying that that's going on, but I'm kind of saying that it looks like that.
It looks like it's happening. Yeah.
And
he's not getting.
And again, like I'm sure, like I'm sure he's not walking around on like a massive. Of course he could. I'm sure he could look crazy, But I mean, I think he has other interests. I think by he's pretty smart. He kept things on the edge.
Oh no, you're absolutely right.
Or not, and,
I don't think he needs any of this. I don't think he needs it. He doesn't.
He has no reason to. And honestly, like I said, now he's going to be turning. I believe it's going to be 47 next year. I'm saying when we look at Dexter, an amazing champion, whatever, but for the first time, and I know you agree.
last year and this year I saw the signs of age.
I was like watching him on stage, and of course, he's incredibly probably the most decorated bodybuilder ever. I mean, how many wins, right? So it's phenomenal. But as you know as well as I do, that when he came out, I was like, wow, okay, so now he's physique. It's done. It's time to retire.
It's time to retire.
I mean, how dare I say even his 9th place, whatever, I'm not saying it was but I'm just saying he definitely had dissipated very quickly, and it was evident. And now keep in mind, though, this year probably wasn't very helpful. I mean, I know he tried a different approach, using different kind of training, whatever it is, but still, you could tell that Father Time.
It doesn't. I remember when he wasn't even fucking doing cardio hardly before shows.
Right.
So it's like,
yeah.
He's like, I just fucking cut out candy and shit before that's the first part of my diet. I'm like, oh great,
yeah. So
there's the reason why this motherfucker's still able to be on stage at the Olympia stage at 52.
Right. Yeah,
because he's got this kind of crazy genetics.
There's no doubt, and it was great seeing him with his family up there and do all that. So it was great, but it's interesting to see the change of the guard now, right?
Yeah. So who do you think is, out of all the guys, some of the new guys, who do you think is coming up the ladder? Who do you think we're going to see a lot more of? I personally think that one of the cooler guys is Hunter Labrada. Even though he was a little dismal at the show because he just got outclassed, man. He's a young kid, and he just still needs to mature. But if this kid continues to improve at the rate that he is, he's going to be a nice competitor. I don't know if he's going to ever be Mr. Olympia, but he's going to be good.
But he will be placing in the top. He'll be in that mix, and correct because he finished. I mean, he did his first one. So, yeah,
what do you think of Nick? What do you think of Nick Walker?
What do I think of Nick?
Yeah, what do you think of Nick Walker?
Okay, I think he was in great condition for the last show, but I just feel that with him, I feel that his torso is a little bit too long for his legs, right? Right. And I feel that although his legs are big, the way that the bellies are, I just think the upper body offsets. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Maybe the things are being rushed a little bit.
You think?
Yeah. And one thing that concerns me about him, because he's a nice kid. I've talked to him, and he's a good kid. I guess what could kind of concern me maybe is I saw some like below the knee, like some of this cable, like vascularity that.
Oh, he's got a little. Maybe he has some varicose veins or something.
Yeah, there's some stuff. And to me, like, just from a health standpoint, you
can get that corrected. That's easy. You can get that stuff corrected.
No, I know.
He springs up out of nowhere for me.
Sorry, are we editing some of this? Can you edit
oh no, that's okay. He springs out of nowhere for me. Because I never followed him, and then all of a sudden I started hearing about him. And then this last year, so a year and a half, 2 years, and so he's on the forefront of my mind because he actually made the Olympia, and he's a big fucker. He is a big dude. So, and I'm like, wow.
Nick Walker.
Nick Walker. He's a big fella.
He didn't qualify for the Olympia.
He was. Oh no, I'm sorry. But he won something this last year. He wasn't at the Olympia, but he won something.
He won North American.
Yeah. So anyways, he had a lot of talk about him, about one of the new up and coming guys, and I looked at him. I thought, his physique looks, he's big and impressive, but it looks muddied. It doesn't look clean. His muscles run into each other. They don't have, and to me that is what it's kind of piggybacks on what you were saying. Like I think things are being rushed. Things are being rushed.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, his coach did a great job bringing him in condition, whatever. I just, to me, it's just, it just looks kind of rushed. I mean,
Well, hey man, I can talk. This is almost 2 hours. I can talk forever with this stuff. I'm going to have you on again, and we're going to talk about the next conversation will be about drugs. It'll be about more competitor stuff. It'll be fun stuff. Yeah, we'll have so yeah, thank you. So I really, really appreciate you, David. Stay on the line after I get off this, but I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show with me, man.
Sure, do it again. Thank you for having me on. It was a blast.
So, all right, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate it. Stay on the line.
You're high with Daddy Yoshi.